170 kilometers. That was the promise. A city stretching from the Red Sea, coast deep, into the Saudi Arabian desert. 2 parallel walls of mirrored glass, each 500 meters tall. 9 million residents living inside a single continuous structure. No cars, no streets, no carbon emissions. When Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman unveiled the line in January 2021, he called it a civilizational revolution. A city that would redefine how humans live. A project so bold, so unprecedented, that it would announce Saudi Arabia's arrival as a global superpower of the future. The promotional videos were stunning. Gleaming renders showed residents strolling through vertical gardens. High-speed trains connecting communities in 20 minutes. Artificial intelligence, managing every aspect of daily life. A perfect fusion of nature and technology, stretching endlessly across the horizon. The budget, $500 billion. The timeline, first residents moving in by 2024, full completion by 2030. 4 years later, the vision has shattered. The line has been scaled back from 170 kilometers to just 2.4 kilometers. That's a reduction of 98.6%. The planned population has collapsed from 9 million to fewer than 300,000. Construction has been suspended. Workers have been laid off. And in January 2025, NEOM officials acknowledged that the project might take 100 years to complete. This is the story of how the most ambitious construction project in human history fell apart. How physics defeated ambition. How finance crushed fantasy. And how a desert full of foundations now stands as a monument to what happens when vision exceeds reality. Let's begin with the mathematics of the line. Because this is where the dream started to die. 170 kilometers long, 500 meters tall, 200 meters wide. These weren't just impressive numbers. They were impossible numbers. Consider, the line would have been the tallest structure on Earth, not by a little, but by a factor of 3. The Burj Khalifa stands at 828 meters. The line would have stretched 500 meters high for 170 continuous kilometers. That's not a building. That's a wall across an entire region. The total floor space, approximately 260 square kilometers. For comparison, Manhattan is 59 square kilometers. The line would have contained more than 4 Manhattans of interior space within a single enclosed structure. Then there's the population density. 9 million people and 34 square kilometers of footprint. That's 265,000 people per square kilometer. Manila, the densest city on Earth, has 44,000. The line would have been 6 times denser than anywhere humans have ever lived. And they planned to build this in 9 years, in the middle of a desert, with technology that didn't exist. An engineering consultant who worked on the project told the Financial Times, when you actually started to do the calculations, the numbers just didn't add up. But no one wanted to be the person who told the Crown Prince's vision was impossible. The first cracks appeared before a single wall was raised. To understand why the line failed, you must understand one man, Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS. The Crown Prince personally drove every major decision. He chaired the NEOM board. He approved the designs. He set the dimensions, and according to multiple sources who worked on the project, he refused to accept limitations. When engineers suggested that a 100-meter height would be more feasible, MBS insisted on 500 meters. When architects proposed a more modest length, he demanded 170 kilometers. When advisors warned about costs, he increased the budget. It had to be 500 meters high and it had to be 200 meters across, one planner told the Financial Times. That was non-negotiable. The Crown Prince had decided. This created an impossible working environment. Teams were tasked with solving problems that had no solutions. Designs were approved that defied physics. Timelines were set that ignored reality. One senior construction manager described the line as uninvestable by 2023. But the project continued. Foundations were poured. Contracts were signed. Workers were hired by the tens of thousands. Why? Because no one tells the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia that his vision is a fantasy. In authoritarian systems, bad news travels slowly if it travels at all. The people closest to power have the most to lose by delivering unwelcome truths. So problems get hidden. Concerns get minimized, and projects continue long past the point where anyone believes they will succeed. The line became a monument not to engineering excellence, but to the dangers of unchecked authority. $500 billion. That was the original budget for NEOM, the larger development zone containing the line. By 2021, internal estimates placed the line's cost alone at $1.6 trillion. By 2022, that number had grown to $4.5 trillion. By 2025, the estimated total cost exceeded $8.8 trillion, more than 25 times Saudi Arabia's entire annual government budget. Where did these numbers come from? Start with the foundations. The line required drilling thousands of massive piles into the desert floor. Some of these piles were 2.5 to 3 meters in diameter, among the largest ever constructed. A construction specialist who worked on the project said, "Some of these piles are the biggest in the world. They're absolutely colossal." 60 piling rigs worked around the clock, installing 60 to 65 piles per day. Approximately 6,000 piles were drilled across 2 kilometers of desert. Just the foundation work cost several $billion. Then consider the materials. Reports indicated that the line was consuming 1/5 of the world's available steel supply. Glass, concrete, specialized equipment, every needed to be sourced at scales never before attempted, and the structure itself hadn't even begun to rise. Labor costs mounted. Equipment costs escalated. Design changes multiplied as engineers discovered that original plans were Every solution created new problems. Every fix required new budgets. Meanwhile, the source of funding was drying up. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund depends heavily on oil revenues. When oil prices declined, the money to fund impossible dreams declined with it. Bloomberg Economics estimated that Saudi Arabia needs oil at $96 per barrel to balance its budget and $113 to fund the Crown Prince's megaprojects. In late 2024, Saudi crude was trading at $55. The mathematics of ambition had collided with the mathematics of reality. Between them, a 200-meter gap would contain all of human activity parks, plazas, residential areas, everything. This is Cayeda Canyon effect, and it has destroyed projects before. In Las Vegas, the Vidara Hotel's reflective surface created a death ray that burned hotel guests by the pool. What worked near the Red Sea wouldn't work 50 kilometers inland. One by one, the engineering challenges mounted, not as problems to be solved, but as walls that could not be climbed. Saudi Arabia expected the world to help pay for its vision. Foreign investment was supposed to flow into NEOM, bringing not just money but expertise, technology, and legitimacy. It never came. Western companies looked at the line and saw risk, financial risk, reputational risk, and ethical risk. Human rights concerns about Saudi Arabia intensified after the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. Forced displacement of the Hawaiitet tribe raised additional alarms. Reports of worker deaths and exploitation made international headlines. Major financial institutions stayed away. Technology companies that might have provided smart city infrastructure kept their distance. The foreign investment that MBS counted on materialized at only a fraction of projected levels. Some prominent architects withdrew entirely. Norman Foster, one of the world's most celebrated designers, terminated his participation, citing human rights and ecological concerns. Francine Hoban of Meccanu did the same. Their departures signaled to the industry that the line carried risks beyond the financial. Those who remained were bound by strict confidentiality agreements. No architect involved in the line lists the project on their website. The secrecy itself became a warning sign. The project required us to be complicit in something we didn't fully believe in, one designer later admitted anonymously. But by the time you realized that, you were already too deep. Without foreign investment, Saudi Arabia was left funding the line almost entirely through its sovereign wealth fund. And that fund, despite being worth nearly $1 trillion, couldn't sustain spending at the pace the line demanded. By 2024, the Public Investment Fund recorded an $8 billion write-down related to NEOM projects. The money wasn't gone, but confidence in the project was. The cuts began quietly. In 2022, the plan called for 20 housing modules across 16 kilometers to be completed by 2030. Residents were expected to begin moving in by 2024 or 2025. By 2023, 20 modules had become just 3. By April 2024, Bloomberg reported that the line had been scaled back from 170 kilometers to 2.4 kilometers. The targeted population for 2030 had dropped from 1.5 million to fewer than 300,000. Saudi officials initially denied the reports. Economy Minister Faisal Al-Ibrahim told the World Economic Forum in Riyadh, for NEOM, the projects, the intended scale is continuing as planned. There is no change in scale. But the evidence told a different story. Construction activity slowed across the site. Contracts were paused. Workers were dismissed. The massive excavation that had transformed kilometers of desert went quiet. Some foundations that had already been poured were now useless, built for structures that would never rise. Billions of dollars in concrete and steel sat in the sand. Monuments to abandoned plans. Everyone working on the project knew, one former employee said. The plans kept shrinking, but we kept being told the vision was unchanged. At some point, you stopped believing. In July 2025, Bloomberg reported that Saudi Arabia had hired external consultants to conduct a strategic review of the line. The kingdom was officially reassessing whether its flagship project was even viable. Then came September 2025. The Public Investment Fund suspended work on the line until further notice. The world's most ambitious construction project had effectively stopped. What remains of the line today? According to available reports, approximately $50 billion has been spent. Some sources suggest the number is higher. That money bought thousands of foundation piles drilled into the desert. Kilometers of excavation trenches support facilities for hundreds of thousands of workers, design work from dozens of international architecture firms. Promotional campaigns seen around the world. What it did not buy was a city. As of late 2025, no residents live in the line. No buildings stand at their planned 500-meter height. The mirrored facades that were supposed to stretch to the horizon exist only in renders and promotional videos. Instead, there are half-finished earthworks. Abandoned equipment. Worker camps built for a construction force that has been significantly reduced. Financial Times journalists who investigated the project described interviewing more than 20 people who worked on the line. Engineers, construction managers, executives. All requested anonymity, fearing legal repercussions from Saudi Arabia. Their collective assessment was damning. One former employee summarized it simply. Everyone knows the project won't work. It's now just a matter of letting MBS down gently. The Crown Prince's vision had consumed $50 billion. It had displaced indigenous communities. It had employed hundreds of thousands of workers under grueling conditions, and it had produced almost nothing that could be called a city. In January 2025, NEOM Deputy CEO Rehan Fayez acknowledged that the line might require a 100-year time frame to construct and populate. 100 years. A project announced in 2021, originally scheduled for completion in 2030, now stretching to 2125 or beyond. That's not a delay. That's an admission that the original vision will never be realized. It was killed by a system where the only acceptable answer was yes. The third lesson concerns the nature of cities themselves. Cities are not designed from above. They grow from below. They emerge from countless individual decisions: where to open a shop, where to build a home, where to meet a friend. The greatest cities in the world were not planned by committees or announced by princes. They evolved over centuries, shaped by the needs of the people who lived in them. The line attempted to reverse this process, to design a city for 9 million people before a single resident had chosen to live there, to optimize everything before anything existed to optimize, to create a community without a community. It was urban planning as software development, as if cities were apps that could be coded and deployed. But cities are not apps. They are living systems, and living systems cannot be built from blueprints alone.